Hello, this is Cameron. Welcome to the Real World Podcast. We are excited that you're here to join us. The Real World Podcast is all about celebrating and cultivating a passion for the cinematic art form. Movies combine all the arts: music, photography, acting, writing, directing, all of it. You name it, it's all there in a movie. It takes an army to create a film. So all kinds of different aspects of different art forms are found in movies. And so, if you have a passion for film, if you enjoy watching movies, either as a casual fan or as a major cinephile like me, you'll no doubt enjoy this podcast. So we're glad that you've joined us. I cannot wait to continue talking about movies. I've been doing it my whole life, but now I get to put it out there on the internet for people to check out. So this has been a lot of fun, and we hope you enjoy this, our very first episode, our inaugural episode, our maiden voyage as we take a journey through the cinematic art form, journey through the history of movies, and we're going to look at all kinds of different films here. So there'll be something for everyone. Just join in, and we'll be happy to have you along. Yeah, I'm Cameron. I am a 30-year-old film fanatic from down in Tampa, Florida, and I've been watching movies my whole life, since before I can even remember. So grown up around movies and movie fans, and yeah, I'm excited to get this conversation started. So today we are beginning episode 1 of the Real World Podcast with our top 5 favorite films of all time. And today joining me is this guy. Who are you?
Hi, I'm Bert. Nice to meet you, Cam.
You too.
We have talked one time before.
Yes.
So I'm Bert. I hail from Grand Rapids, Michigan. And we both love movies. I've been watching movies my whole life, although not until about age 12 or 13 in my case. I'm 49 now. I like the sort of big budget popcorn style films. Not all of them, though. My philosophy is that a movie has to try to impress me. I sort of start from that premise. I've walked out of a lot of movies over time. I'll turn movies off if they're terrible, but I try to get through them. And I will say I do like most genres, but not so much Westerns or the classics. But again, I'm trying to learn. I'm trying to be good. I'm trying to learn. So that's kind of what I'm about.
That's great. Awesome. All right, so today on our first episode, we are breaking down our top 5 favorite films. We're starting with number 5 for each of our lists. And my pick is The Empire Strikes Back. And Bert's pick is Back to the Future. Are you ready for this?
Yeah, before we get into that, though, I wanted to ask you a question. When you're thinking about your top films, and I don't know how recent your top 100 is, but mine's pretty recent. And you go through and you start thinking about what your top films are. And especially when you get down to those very top ones, the top 5, like we're going to be going through, you stop and think, what makes a movie your favorite? Like Back to the Future, I went back and rewatched it. Yeah, it's a great film. It probably is the 5th best movie I've ever seen, but I don't watch this movie every year. I watch Christmas Vacation every single year. So why is Christmas Vacation 48 or 28 or whatever it is? And you know what I mean? Like, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, that's a great question. Your favorite. It doesn't have to be the most rewatchable necessarily. I think when it comes to your favorite films, I think they can definitely change over time, right? We can watch a movie. I mean, so many millions of movies out there. We can watch a movie tomorrow and go, that's my new favorite movie, But I think when we're talking about like our personal favorites, those that kind of are the constants, it's more about movies that impacted us like it hit us at just the right time in our lives. That really like just impacted us either emotionally, or we related to something in the story or the characters or the themes of the movie. There's all kinds of things that go into what makes your favorite movie, but I think it ultimately comes down to, again, just that whole idea of when you saw it, what you were going through in your life at that time, people you saw it with, maybe other people in your life who also enjoyed it. All of these things I think play into it. So yeah, Empire for me, the really the whole original Star Wars trilogy for me is kind of my number five pick. I singled out Empire for a reason we'll get into soon. Um, but those are movies that I just grew up watching. I don't remember a time before Star Wars, really. It was always a part of my life. My dad was a huge fan and showed it to me. We had it on VHS, at home on the shelf, and we would just play it on loop constantly. So yeah, that's kind of my connection with Empire and with the Star Wars trilogy. So yeah, what are your thoughts on it?
Well, I guess my thoughts change, they, as I think about it, my thoughts change even. But one thought I had too was, I think about some great movies that I've watched, like Black Hawk Down and Saving Private Ryan. Great films. I mean, they happen to both be war films. They're actually, for me, they're really hard to watch, but they're great films. Like I thought they were tremendously made. The music is great. I mean, visually, I mean, the story, everything.
Yeah.
They're obviously true stories.
Right.
So those are great films that are not in my top 100. I almost feel bad,
Mm,
but I can't say they're my favorites. Like I'm
yeah.
not gonna tell someone, hey, you really should go watch this movie. I mean, you might love it, but I don't know. I guess there are things like that that come up when you're rating films that you have to decide, is this actually one of my favorite films?
Mm,
And hard decisions have to be made.
right.
But I don't know if you have films like that too, where you found a film was great, but you might never watch it again. That's how I kind of come across with films like Black Hawk Down.
Sure. No, totally. Yeah. Yeah, there's plenty like that. Yeah, there are movies that are just yeah, they're about some kind of harsh subject matter. I mean, Schindler's List automatically comes to my mind as a
Sure.
movie I've
Yeah.
seen once, and I'll probably watch it again, but it's not one I watch every weekend or anything.
Yeah, but the movie's
Um,
probably a 10, right?
oh,
but
absolutely.
but
Yeah,
neither of us are putting it in our top five. And
absolutely.
you can't really point to anything that's wrong with the film.
Sure. Yeah.
So,
Yeah, I hear you. And this Christmas Vacation thing hit home for me too, because yeah, we watch that every year as well. But
and it's not on your top probably 10 or 20 even, I would
no,
guess.
it's not. It's not.
Yeah.
It's a solid movie. I thoroughly enjoy watching, but um
So
no.
rewatchability isn't the determining factor. I
Correct.
think that's
Right. It's a part of it. It's a part of it, I think.
yeah,
But it's
sure,
not it's
sure.
not the determining factor. Again, I think it all comes down
Right.
to, your personality,
Mhm.
the kinds of movies that you gravitate towards. And
Right.
again, just,
Right.
when you saw it, how you saw it, who you saw it with. I mean, there's so many factors that go
Right.
into it.
Right. I think that's true. And I think that if someone says, well, if you watch Christmas Vacation 5 times a year and that you watch that more than anything, that's definitely your favorite movie. But all I can say to that is if I'm telling someone about 5 movies they should watch before they die or something, I'm probably not putting Christmas Vacation on that list. I mean, maybe, if to have a few laughs, of course.
Right.
But if I really want them to really feel cinema, I'm
Yeah.
going to give them the real top 5. So
Right.
that's what I put in my top 5 are those films that deeply impact me.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Totally agree with that. Yeah. I think that's a great way to determine what those movies are going to be.
Okay, so my number 5 pick is Back to the Future. This movie was super important to me because it was one of the first movies I ever saw. I guess I was about 12 when it came out. And it was just one of those films that it was like life started when I watched this movie. Before it, I had been watching some Doctor Who, like the British one, and it was bad. I mean, it was the 80s Doctor Who was bad. It was, I mean, I liked it, but I mean,
Yeah.
it's so bad, right? And
Right.
then I watched this movie, and it was like this light bulb came on inside my brain. I mean, I was
Mm,
just like energized after seeing this movie. Michael J. Fox, he's just so cool in this movie.
yeah.
And so it was like sci-fi's cool. Whoa, oh, okay, great. And I mean, Michael J. Fox is like 5'5", and he does this fearless stuff.
Yeah.
He just squares right up with Biff like more than once in the
Right.
film. And of course, the concept is funny and very engaging, intriguing about meeting your parents and and the hilarity of your mom hitting on you and this kind of thing. That, of course. made it super interesting too.
Right.
And it's just casted so well. I haven't seen the film in probably at least 5 years. I think I bought the Blu-ray about 5 years ago,
Yeah.
and I'm just now rewatching.
Right.
But and it looked great on Blu-ray. But
Yeah.
you look at someone like Crispin Glover, and first of all, so many quotable lines.
Oh man.
Even I don't know if they intended it that way.
Great
I don't
dialogue.
know if they
Yeah.
ever do, but
Right.
I mean, the character that he creates, you almost wonder how he even had the latitude to do it. You know,
Right.
and you know what I'm talking about. And just something as simple as the way that he laughs. And I'm not going to try to do the laugh because
Right.
it would be bad acting. But you know what I mean?
Yes.
Like at one point he
Yeah.
laughs. I think, oh, there's something funny. It's the honeymooners. He's watching the
Yeah.
honeymooners,
Right.
and he starts to break into this laughter, and he's like contorting his body, and he's
Yeah.
and but at
Yes.
one point he doesn't even make any noise when he's laughing, and he just
Right.
is like contorting and
Yeah.
laughing. But
Right. This was.
it's just so far to go as a character that
Yeah.
in a mainstream movie with a lot on the line, I just find it interesting that he was able to have that latitude as a character. And that's just one example. I mean, obviously Doc Brown, is
No.
zany and perfect, which, and I will let you talk here, but
No. No. You're good.
these thoughts are sort of streaming from my head. But when I watch Back to the Future now, we're both big Seinfeld fans.
Yeah.
I swear that's Kramer. Like Kramer, I
Right.
wonder if he got sort of his, twisting and reacting and all that kind of stuff. It's so
Yeah.
close to what Kramer did in
That's
Seinfeld,
a
right? Just
good
a few
point.
years later,
Yeah.
because I think Seinfeld started in '93, if I remember right.
Yeah.
And so I wonder if that's the inspiration. I didn't look it up, but I can't help but wonder.
Right. I think actually Seinfeld started earlier. I think it was like 90 or
91 maybe.
91 maybe.
Yeah, so that wouldn't be that far from
Yeah.
Doc Brown's. Like that was right at the heyday of Back to the Future. 2 and
Right.
3, I think, came out maybe 90,
Yeah, 2 and 3
89,
were
90,
89, 90. Yep. Yep, you're right.
back
You're
to
right.
back.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I mean, Crispin Glover definitely stands out. His performance is just so unique. I mean, all of them are really, but his choices were so specific. And yeah, when I was listening to the commentary, they definitely talked a lot about how many ideas he came to the table with,
Mm.
many of which they shot down. But
Oh,
yeah,
you mean he had even crazier
he had
ideas?
even crazier
You're like,
ideas.
that
If you
might
can,
be a bit much.
yeah, exactly. So yeah, that is
Wow.
interesting. Yeah, he definitely stands out though. I mean, George McFly is a character that one of those that you just never forget. And of course, Doc Brown you brought up as well. Yeah, Christopher Lloyd was just on another level. I mean, just that's such a memorable performance from an actor, and his whole look and uh, you know the hair and the whole deal. Just yeah, definitely stands out.
I think in the modern day, right before he goes back in time, it's when they're standing at the mall, and he's talking to the camera and he's trying to say what's going to happen is before he gets shot up.
Right.
And it's such high def now that I'm looking at this high def version of Doc Brown, and I'm looking at his neck, and his neck, it looks like almost like he had some kind of prosthetic on
I
to
think he
make him a
did.
little older.
Yeah.
And at first I forgot that he was going to go back in time and that was probably his original, because the prosthetics are really good, except it looked
Yeah.
like it's kind of weird. It looked kind of pitted, and I'm
Right.
like, what's wrong with his neck?
Yeah.
But then
Yeah.
I realized, oh wait, he's not that age when this movie was filmed. He's
Exactly.
going to go back in time, and that's his current age probably is when he's in 55 or whatever.
Exactly. Yeah, they did that for Crispin Glover and Leah Thompson as well.
Well, sure,
Right.
yeah.
So you have that
those were a little
scene.
more obvious, I thought, especially Leah Thompson. Yeah.
Right. 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 Yeah. Yeah. For sure. Yeah. But yeah. Yeah. He definitely has some kind of prosthetic. It's fairly subtle.
But on
I
his
think
neck
Doc
like that,
Brown's,
you
but
wouldn't
the neck.
necessarily
You're
think
right. The
it,
neck.
but
Yeah. I didn't
it's so high
specifically look
def.
for that, but yeah. And that's the thing. Yeah. About Blu-rays, right? Is like,
Yeah.
is this what you have? The 25th anniversary
The trilogy
edition? Yeah.
thing. Yeah, that's what I
Yeah.
have. Yeah, that looks
Yeah.
exactly like it.
So
Yeah.
yeah, it definitely looks great and sounds great. But yes,
Yeah, it sure did.
that can be the problem with old movies bringing them to high def is sometimes you notice the
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 flaws.
mistakes or the flaws, right?
Mhm.
Yeah, a little bit more. But
Yeah.
it adds to the
Mhm.
charm for me.
Oh, sure. Yeah. Yeah. And while I'm thinking of it, one little tidbit, when I was in California recently, I went on one of those tours, star tours.
Sure.
And like the first or second stop, we went by this church, which is right near, well, it's right in Hollywood.
Uh-huh.
And they said, oh, this is where the Enchantment Under the Sea dance from Back to the Future was filmed.
Oh
And I
wow.
thought, no way. And I thought, how weird that, I mean, it's basically just a room. I mean, there's
Yeah.
nothing specific. Like they could have filmed it literally anywhere.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering maybe it was where all the studios, like the soundstage is full or something. And they thought, quick, like where's like the nearest, just 4 walls. That's all we need. Because there's
Yeah.
nothing really about that room that you would think is necessarily that memorable, other than
Yeah.
the stairway, maybe sort of the
Right.
exchanges at the end of the movie.
Right. Which that cake
Um,
could have been a different location.
yeah, it's true. Yeah, oh, absolutely. Yeah, maybe it
Yeah.
was. Maybe it was.
Yeah. They
But
could have switched.
yeah, absolutely.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
magic of movie making. Is like it's like, yeah, we shot this little part of this scene here, and in the same scene, but we went to a
yeah,
totally different location, so
right.
you
Oh,
don't know.
absolutely.
Yeah,
Well, because I thought, if I had more time, I kind of would like to go into the church. I'm sure other people have done it, but honestly, what am I going to see? I'm just going to see a room. I mean, I
exactly.
pass by it. I'm not going to really recognize the walls and go, oh yeah, I totally see that this was
Right.
definitely the room they had that
Yeah.
dance in.
Yeah.
Probably not. I mean, maybe
It's
if they had a stage, I don't know,
right. Yeah. It's
but
not still decorated the same way, unfortunately.
yeah, they
Probably.
probably took that down.
Yeah.
They
Right.
probably did. Yeah.
Yeah. That's great. Well, yeah, Back to the Future. I mean, this is an all-time classic. It's one of those timeless movies for me that it's very a timeless movie is hard to make because you either have to make it like Star Wars, long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. It's just like a fairy tale, right? It just could be any time,
Right.
any place. But another way to make a movie timeless is to make it very, very specific time. So it's
Sure.
very specifically 85
Yes.
and
Yes. That's
55,
true.
right?
That's true.
So that's a way to make a movie timeless is to really just, either really hone in on this is very 80s, right? Like everything that happens. I mean, from the opening scene, him cranking up the amp and, playing the guitar, all the music, of course, Huey Lewis and the News and all that. Um,
Yeah.
or you make it, some kind of other just totally different
That's a
different
very good
thing.
point. Yeah. Yeah.
So yeah, to me, it's a timeless movie that has just stood the test of time because for that reason, and it's just a great story. I mean, it's just a
Mhm.
very relatable, grounded story, even though it deals with the time travel thing. The characters are very real, very grounded,
Yes.
and relatable. That's what makes a great character that's endured the test of time is someone that you can kind of definitely see yourself in. Um, so yeah,
Sure.
I wanted to run down some quick info about the movie.
Great. Yeah.
So Universal Pictures produced it, or made it. That's the studio behind it. It was released July 3rd, 1985. It's an hour and 56 minutes long. The budget was 19 million. It ended up grossing 388 million worldwide.
Wow.
So
That's got to be one of
very
their biggest windfalls of any movie ever.
absolutely, and it continues to make money this day. Guys like us will buy the Blu-ray or the 4K when that comes out. That whole thing. So, yeah,
Yeah.
definitely a very profitable one. Library of Congress selected it in 2007 for its historical, cultural, and aesthetic significance. So
Did they
that's a
do a
pretty
ranking or something, or are they
well.
just
Library
pick
of
that
Congress,
movie?
they just like preserve movies basically.
Yeah.
And they'll make selections every year. I don't know how many they pick, but
Okay. So
yeah,
once a year
those
they grab one that's
yeah, they
particularly
grab a
good. Yeah.
handful that's like we need
Oh,
to
okay.
make sure that this one is preserved for
Put that in the vault.
posterity, I guess. Right,
Hmm.
exactly.
Gotcha.
So yeah, they did
Hopefully the
that back
Blu-ray
in.
version,
Right, right, exactly. Yes.
the VHS.
Uh,
Yeah.
right. Yeah. So that's a little bit of info about it that I thought was interesting. Watching the commentary was fun. It was director Robert Zemeckis and writer Bob Gale on the
Sure.
commentary that I listened to, and it was actually an interesting commentary because it was actually a Q&A that they did right after like a 20th or 25th anniversary screening that they did.
Okay.
And so, yeah, it wasn't like a scene specific commentary. The director's like going through the whole
Okay.
movie. It
Yeah.
was,
Yeah.
it was a little all over the place, but it was good because they were kind of broad questions, general questions about the movie and the cast and that whole thing. Now,
Mhm.
are you aware of the recasting that was done
For for George.
for George? No, I think it was George recast as well. I know that Marty was recast.
Oh, you mean like? Oh, I'm sorry. You mean you're talking about the guy that was booted after
Right.
what's his
Yes.
name?
Eric Stoltz.
Yeah, Eric Stoltz. That's right.
Yeah.
Yes, I did know
Right.
about that. I thought you were talking about in the sequel when the whole,
Oh.
because there's that whole lawsuit and
Oh
that
man,
came out
that
of
was
yeah, that's ugly too. And
really
yeah,
ugly.
just so that we could say we're talking about the
Mhm.
fact that um Crispin Glover
Right.
didn't get invited back for the second movie for whatever
Yeah.
reason, and then sued because they kind of made it look like he was in the movie when really he wasn't. It was actually
Right.
the whole that scene was kind of strange. But you're
Right.
talking about, if you want to say what you're talking about,
Yeah. Yeah. So Eric Stoltz was originally cast as Marty McFly, and they actually shot, I think, for 2 weeks with him, and he just wasn't vibing with the cast, with the direction they wanted to go, with the script, with the comedy. It just wasn't working out for all those different reasons, and so they went back to actually their first choice, who was Michael J. Fox. The reason they didn't cast him in the first place is because he was shooting Family Ties, huge sitcom back in the 80s.
right, right.
And he would not be allowed out of his contract. So um, after Stoltz didn't work out, they went back to I don't know what channel it was on. Was it CBS? I'm not sure, but they went back to them and said basically, hey, we've got to have Michael J. Fox. He's the only one who can play this character. We kind of wrote it for him. And so they said, okay, you can have him, but basically he could only shoot nights.
Hmm.
So he had to shoot the sitcom during the day,
That's
run straight
crazy.
to the studio to shoot Back to the Future at night, and basically got 1 to 2 hours of sleep for months on end, which is kind of a crazy thing. I could not imagine.
Yeah, and that's not the first time that's happened, or at least I know that when David Spade and Chris Farley were shooting Tommy Boy, they were locked in to Saturday Night Live, and they did some really crazy hours on that film. So it's probably happened a lot.
Yeah, yeah. People that get stuck into TV contracts and want to go over to movies, it can be difficult for that reason. That's why a lot of TV actors don't make the jump, I'm sure,
Hmm.
because they kind of get into that routine, and they kind of mess them up. I mean, TV is much more job security than a movie. A movie you shoot for a
Right.
few months and you get paid, and then you got to find the next one. Whereas a
Yeah.
TV show, you're kind of guaranteed that weekly paycheck. So
Yeah, especially if you're David Crusoe or someone like that. Yeah.
right. Yes, exactly.
Right.
Exactly. So yeah, let's see, what other info did we have about this? I mean, there's so much. I mean, they went over a lot in that commentary I listened to. It was a movie that they wanted to make for a long time. Actually, in 1980 is when they came up with the idea.
Mm.
So they had the idea brewing, Zemeckis and Gale, for a while. And they just knew they wanted to make a cool time travel movie. They were big fans of H.G. Wells' The Time Machine. you
Sure.
know have you seen the original Time Machine movie?
I have not. I've only
It's
seen the Guy Pearce one, which I like.
okay. Okay, yeah,
I
yeah,
don't
that
like
one.
the end of it, but it's probably true
Yeah,
to the book. But
right,
I
right.
love the first two acts of
Yeah.
that one. But
Mhm.
is the original really good?
The original I like. I mean, I like older
Yeah.
movies, and it's kind of,
Yeah.
it's cheesy to watch now, but it's fun. It's fun. I like it a lot. It's a good time travel story for
Yeah.
sure.
Before and I've never read the book, but before I
Yeah.
watched the Guy Pearce one, there's that scene in the movie where he's sitting on the machine and it's running and he's running through time and you can kind of see everything around him changing. And
Yeah.
before I even saw that movie, I always wondered what it would be like if I stayed in one spot for like 100 years. Like how much of
Right.
this would decay and what would it look
Right.
like and all that.
Yeah.
And so you kind of get the answer to that question in that
Yeah.
movie, but I found
Yeah.
that fascinating.
Yeah. They do that in the original too. Yeah, it's pretty
I think they
neat.
do that in AI to some extent too.
I haven't seen
Or they
AI
don't
in
show
so
you
long.
necessarily like a time lapse or
Yeah.
so-called time lapse,
Right.
but they fast forward like 200 years or something by the end of that movie, right?
Yeah. That's right. That's right. They do
Or
that. Yeah.
2000 years or something like
Yeah.
that.
Yeah. It's a
Not
long, long time.
10,000 or whatever it is in the time
Right.
machine, but yeah.
Right. Right. Yeah. That is cool. That is cool. And that was another thing they talked about. They were like, how can we make this time travel movie different? And they said that kind of the linchpin was, um, making the time machine into a car.
Yeah. Yeah.
That was originally a chamber that he got inside,
Okay.
and
Which would be like the time machine
yeah,
movie
exactly. It
or a
doesn't
book.
move.
Yeah.
Yeah, it just stays in one spot. But when they
Right.
came up with the
Right.
idea of, oh, we can put it in a car, because I guess in the original screenplay, the final act of the movie is they have to put the time machine on a pickup truck and drive the pickup truck to a nuclear test site, and that's
Gotcha.
how he gets back to the future.
I see. I
They test
see.
the atom bomb as they're driving through, and he's in the chamber, and it blows up, and
Really?
he's, yeah. So
Wow.
in order to simplify that, they're like, you know what, let's just make it a car, and he has to hit a certain
Uh-huh.
speed, and then there he
And
goes.
it made it cool. The whole thing about it was cool. Every choice they made in that movie made it like really cool,
Yeah,
especially for 85. I mean, now looking back, I mean, you'd have to tell me because you saw it for the first time a lot more recently than my first time watching it. But
sure. No,
um,
this was kind of another one. Well, I was a little bit older when I saw this one, I think. But this is another one that I don't really remember the first time I saw it.
okay, okay,
But yeah, I saw all three of them pretty close together.
yeah, yeah,
Um, and so, but yeah, I've liked them ever since I first saw them when I was, I don't know, I was probably 10 or 12, somewhere around there.
yeah,
I saw it.
right,
So
okay, yeah.
yeah,
I don't. Did you have anything else along those lines you wanted to add behind the scenes kind of stuff?
not really. I mean, there's a few things I have, I mean, again, they talked a lot about, where the idea came from. The idea from Bob Gale, who, was the co-writer, he was at his parents' house looking through old photo albums, and he found his parents' yearbook, their high school yearbook, and was going
Oh,
through and found out his dad was president of his high school class, and he said, um, my question was, would I have gotten along with my parents, because he was in high school. When he was in high school, he was trying to abolish student government. And so he had, he had the
interesting.
idea of, would my dad and I have gotten along if we went to school at the same time? So that was the kind
Huh.
of kernel of the idea that he had
Gotcha.
back in 1980 or whenever it was that they came up with
Right.
the
Right.
concept. And so yeah, they kicked around ideas, and kind of were trying to come up with something. It wasn't until 84 when Zemeckis made, I think it's his third movie, Romancing the Stone. That was a huge hit. He finally had a big
Yeah.
hit. Then he kind of
So
was
he had
now he
the
now
green
could do
light.
anything. Kind of like
Yeah.
Spielberg with Jaws. Like, he had his big hit, he could go make Close
Yeah.
Encounters now, right? So
Right. Right.
similar thing with Zemeckis. So he now
Okay.
could kind of do his thing after that. Romancing the Stone was a hit,
Yeah.
and
Makes
so
sense.
yeah. So that's kind of where it all started. And then they got Spielberg on as producer.
Right. Right.
So that kind of cinched the deal for them as well.
Probably got him a little bigger budget then at that point.
Definitely, definitely.
uh, one thing I wanted to mention was the score, in this movie,
Mm,
and it's kind of a unique one because the score is perfect for watching. Although I can't say it's one I would listen to independently. And there's some movies that the score I have and still listen to the scores outside of the film, sometimes more than the film. We'll get to that in future episodes. But
yeah,
uh yeah, I mean, I don't know what you think. The score it just fits. It's iconic. But I don't know if I'd be listening to it in my car or something like that.
right, right. Yeah, it's definitely yeah, super recognizable. I mean, just that dun
Right.
dun 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 dun. I mean, you instantly know
Hmm.
what you're listening to. It's, like, there's only a
Right.
few scores like that, really. I mean, that a lot of people can
Sure.
recognize,
Yeah.
you know.
Yeah.
And so yeah, Alan Silvestri, he just knocked it out of the park with that one. And that
Yeah.
was actually a concern. They talked a little bit about the score, and that was a concern
Oh,
Spielberg had, because
yeah.
he felt that the Romancing the Stone score that Silvestri had done wasn't as iconic as it should have been.
Oh,
Um,
okay. Yeah.
and so he kind of had some notes on that. He's like, yeah, make sure they he works hard on that one, and gets get those few notes, those few, there's like John Williams notes where it's just like a few notes that you instantly
Yeah.
can hum after you've heard it.
Well,
And
he did it, and
he did.
I of all the scores I have that I own, I that's probably my only Silvestri one.
Mm,
Um, so I can't say he's one that's, time after time, knocked it out of the park again.
Right.
I kind of, Howard Shore, who did Lord of the Rings score.
Yep.
I kind of feel the same way. Like there's other
Yeah.
scores that are okay by him,
Sure.
and I'm not discounting his scores or saying they're
Yeah.
bad, but
Right.
by no means have I watched any other movies that I can think of by Howard Shore where I was blown away by the score. Just
Sure.
just thought I would throw that out
Sure.
there. It's kind of like that,
Sure. No, yeah. And Silvestri, the other one that instantly pops into my mind, probably because I just went to the concert. The Florida Orchestra had a concert
Oh yeah,
that I went
right.
to this past weekend where they
Right.
did a bunch of superhero scores.
Right.
And they actually kicked it off with Silvestri's score for Avengers and Captain America. So he did both of those.
He did? Oh, I like those scores.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
I
those
guess
are
I did
good.
not realize. I don't own those
Yeah.
scores. I guess I didn't realize that it was him. But that's
Right.
hey, good for him. I mean, after many years later, because those were good scores. Yeah.
Yeah, they are. Yeah, he's got a few good ones. He's got I just pulled up his filmography. He did Forrest Gump, which that one's, again, some of these aren't like iconic and super recognizable, but they're for really good movies, and I think he did a good job with them. So, Forrest Gump, Stuart Little, Castaway. He works with Zemeckis a lot, obviously. They've worked together for a long time.
Yeah, Castaway, which would be a good one to talk about down the road too, but
sure.
That's very interesting score-wise because there's no score while he's on the island. It's completely silent, and so I always thought that was an interesting choice. Another Zemeckis film, so
definitely. Yep, absolutely. So yeah, he's done some good ones for sure. But yeah, Back to the Future, I think, is by far his most iconic, and probably will remain that way. Yeah, he did an excellent job with it.
Yeah, I forgot about Avengers though. That's, I mean, Captain America's way up there. By the way, whereabouts on your top list is top 100 is Back to the Future approximately? Do you know?
I'm not sure.
Or is it on there even?
I don't know if it is. I was looking at it.
Okay, I was just curious.
A while back. I don't know if it is or not. I don't think it is actually.
That's fair enough. There's definitely good movies that I didn't put on my top 100.
Sure. Yeah, 100. I mean, 100 sounds like a lot. It's really not a lot. It was hard for me to do 100. It was hard for me to do 100.
There might even be some 10s that didn't make it on my top 100. So
yeah, definitely. Yeah, I don't see it on here. I'm looking on here now, and I'm not seeing it. So I don't think it quite made it. But I mean, it's definitely on top 150 or 200 for sure.
It's definitely in the top 5,000. Come on,
right?
Admit
exactly.
Anything else you wanted to comment on before I ask you one more question about this my top 5 film?
There's a few other things. So
okay, go on.
So they talked about the producer. So producer Sidney Sheinberg had 4 notes for them after he read the screenplay.
Okay.
He said, number 1, you can't call the character at that time was called Professor Brown. You can't call him Professor, because if he's a professor, we have to see him in a school teaching kids. That doesn't make sense. He can't be Professor Brown. You have to.
But it's okay if he's a doctor and he's not in a hospital.
It's okay if he's a doctor
or in a clinic. Yeah.
Doc.
Okay.
I mean, we all know him as Doc. I mean, what would he have been? Prof? I don't know.
Yeah. Prof,
yeah. So
Prof Brown.
So they had to change Doc Brown's name to Doc Brown.
Interesting.
His original pet, his pet Einstein, the dog.
Yes.
Was a chimp.
A monkey.
It was a monkey. It was a chimpanzee.
Or chimpanzee, yeah.
Chimpanzee named Einstein. And
that would have been kind of out there.
It would have been a little out there. And there
that might have been neat actually to see a chimp like hanging onto his body when he's trying to. He could have used him as a human shield or a chimp shield when he was being shot at.
Right. And I think their thinking was writing it. We use monkeys for to test space travel and stuff, and they were going to use the animal to test the time machine. So that was, I think, their thinking there. But he said, no movie with a chimp ever made money. And they asked them, they're like, wait, but Clint Eastwood did Every Which Way But Loose, and that was a monkey. And they said, no, that was an orangutan. Different. They're like, okay, all right, we'll change it to a dog. We'll just make it easy. His other changes were Marty's mom's name was originally Meg.
Mm,
He said, Meg, not a good name, not memorable. Have to change
okay.
that.
All
And
right.
so I
That's
think
not
the
a huge deal.
producer's wife's name was Lorraine, and that's why they
Okay.
made it Lorraine.
Okay.
And then the final change they had to make was to change the title. Back to the
Oh.
Future. He did not like the title Back to the Future.
Oh, okay.
So they said, all right, we'll come up with an alternate title. And they came back to him with Spaceman from Pluto. And then he said, let's leave it
Because of
Back
the
to the
comic book
Future.
thing with the yeah,
Yes, you caught
right.
that. So I didn't even
Yeah.
know that. I didn't even know the comic book the Farm Boy has.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
is space. I think it says Space Zombies from
Something like
Pluto.
that. Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And so yeah, it was a reference to that comic book. But no, he's like, after they said Spaceman for Pluto, he says, no, let's just leave it Back to the Future.
I
That'll
mean,
be
it's the
fun.
80s where you got films like Earth Girls Are Easy and titles like
Right.
that. Is that why? Yeah.
Exactly. Well, now that I'm remembering, he when they pitched him Spaceman from Pluto, he said yes, let's keep it. Let's keep it Spaceman from Pluto. And
Yeah.
Spielberg sent him. I guess it was all fax back then, right? So he sent him a fax. Let's keep it
Yeah.
Spaceman from Pluto. I like that. Spielberg faxed him back and said, "Ha ha, we all had a great laugh at this joke. Thanks." And so that's how they got to keep Back to the Future the title.
Right. Yeah. And Spielberg is the man. So there you
Right.
go. That's yeah. Gotcha.
Exactly. All right. So this is a top 5 movie, but is there anything you don't like about it? Anything that stands out that you disliked?
Um, you know, I will say there's almost nothing, and the movie is basically flawless. There's a couple, I mean, there's definitely the whole time travel problem of, affecting the future and that kind of thing, but you got to put that aside if you're going to watch a time travel movie.
Yes.
There were a couple things I wrote down that didn't really make sense in the script, like toward the end when Marty's leaving the dance, he says, I got to go. And Lorraine and George say, well, will we ever see you again? And he gave them no reason to think that they were. I mean, he goes to their school. They bump into him in town. Like, why would they never see him again? But I mean, this is something very minor. And then
Right.
even after he goes back to the future, they're talking about Lorraine and George are talking about how they met, and they totally credit Biff, and they don't even mention the word Marty because they can't, because it's kind of problematic, because their son looks, it looks, sounds, and is the Marty from, you know what I mean? So you can't really
Right.
talk about it. You just sort of forget about that. But
Yeah.
those are minor, things that you can't really dwell on. I just noticed them, and I hadn't noticed them before, but I
Yeah.
was being a little critical at that point, probably.
No, yeah, I thought the exact same thing when I was watching the ending, and we're seeing him come back to this new future that he's created. And that's
Yeah.
kind of the whole thesis behind the entire Back to the Future trilogy. Is I think Doc says in the third movie, the end, um, the future is what you make it. That's kind of the whole idea behind Back to the Future. Um, but yeah, I thought about that same thing too. And I was thinking, so Marty comes into their life at kind of a critical time, I guess, in their lives, but he's only in it for about a week.
Right.
So, as important as that week is,
Yeah.
would you specifically remember this person that well? Like, I'm trying to think back in, like, high school, elementary school. Um, do I remember all my friends? And if I only knew a guy for a week, even
Yeah.
if, again,
It's a fair defense. Yeah, it's a fair
I don't know
defense.
if you would
Definitely.
specifically
Not like they had
remember.
Facebook. They were seeing them all the time.
Exactly. They don't have any
Because he didn't
pictures of
exist
him.
anyway. Right, right,
Right.
exactly. Yeah, he
So
didn't show up for picture day.
yeah, right. So yeah, that's kind of how I
That's
just
fair.
sweep it aside a little bit. I don't really,
Yeah.
doesn't affect me too much. But the thought did cross my mind when I watched it this last time. I was
Yeah,
like, would they remember
there's no
him?
way to make it ironclad, and
Yeah,
so yeah, you can't let it drag the movie down.
right.
One other quick thing, early on in the movie when Marty's at Doc Brown's house, I noticed for the first time there's a saxophone, or maybe it was back in the 50s. at that house. But there's a saxophone in Doc Brown's house. Does he
Mm.
play the saxophone? Because they did not show us that scene. Is that a deleted scene somewhere where he's
Not
sitting
that I'm aware of.
around playing the saxophone? Maybe.
That would be cool.
But I
I'm not
thought
aware
I'd
of any deleted scenes with Doc and a sax, but it very well could exist.
yeah. So anyway, that's the last thought I had on it.
Yeah, sometimes set dressers, I think, just put something they think looks
Yeah.
cool back there just
Right.
for the heck of it.
Yeah.
So
Exactly. In another timeline, he played the saxophone.
right, exactly.
Doc
I
Brown.
do love all the geniuses he has, framed pictures of
Yes.
in his
Yeah.
house. That is just great.
His
That's
idols.
a great touch. And
right.
is it Tom, how could I have been so careless? Talking to Thomas Edison, that stuff is
Right.
really, really smart.
Those
But I
are good
like,
touches. Yeah.
one thing that makes to me the screenplay easily, I would put, if I was just talking about the screenplay, I would probably definitely put that in like a top 100 or maybe even top 50. I mean, it's just so the setup and payoff of everything. I mean, from
Sure.
that first scene in Doc's, little workshop where Marty's
Yeah.
playing the guitar, right? Okay,
Yeah.
we established he plays guitar. He does
Yep.
the whole Battle of the Bands thing, which Huey
Right.
Lewis makes a great cameo there.
Yeah.
Saying it's just too
Right.
darn loud.
All right.
That was
Ironic.
great.
Yeah.
But yeah, that comes back to the end of the movie where
Mhm.
they've got to have a guitar player in order for this song and this dance to happen.
Yeah, it's perfect.
I mean,
Yeah.
it just works so well. The skateboarding. I mean, did you know Spielberg cameos in this movie?
No, I didn't know that. What does he do?
He's the driver of the Jeep in the opening where he's holding onto the Jeep on the skateboard.
Oh, really?
Yeah, and he turns
Okay.
back real quick and kind of gives him a nasty look. That's Spielberg. That's him.
No, that was I did think that was some quality acting. The driver of that.
He's not bad.
I
He's
thought,
made
wow,
a few cameos.
That brings it home.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely.
For sure.
So yeah, there's a few other actors that show up. I mean, we could talk about the cast all day again. Thomas F.
Yeah.
Wilson as Biff is like
He's
pitch
fantastic.
perfect.
Yeah, we didn't mention him, and we probably should have because he's so good.
Yeah, he's excellent. Billy Zane plays one of his
Yeah.
goons, which was
Yeah,
fun
right.
to see.
I don't even know if he has a line, but he cackles a lot.
Yeah, I don't think any of those guys have lines, but yeah, they're good as background players.
Right.
Yeah, so much great stuff. I mean, I'm a huge fan of poster art, and that poster is perfect. I mean, it tells you the whole story in that one
Right.
image. Drew Struzan, he's one of the best poster artists of all time, and he knocked it out of the park with that one.
Yeah.
It was a huge hit at the box office again, as I mentioned. Beat out Clint Eastwood's Pale Rider and Mad Max Beyond Thunderdome at the box office. It was one of the few movies where the second weekend was even higher than the first.
Wow, that is rare.
Yeah, so very good word of mouth on this one. I mean, it was a totally original idea, right? It's not a part of any franchise or anything like that.
Right.
Totally original idea they put out there, and yeah, people just ate it up. And so in the second weekend, it actually topped the first weekend, which is very rare.
I will say, I don't know if there's any movie that guarantees a sequel more than this movie does.
Right. Oh, that's an interesting point. So they talked about that. There were, the question they asked was, so you always had the whole trilogy planned, or what? They're like, no. We thought we'll make one movie. This is our time travel movie.
Really?
We're done. The ending, that ending scene, they said it was really just a joke. It was just, hey, something's got to be done about your kids. Let's go. They fly off into the sunset. The end.
But then they had to make the second movie about that.
Exactly. So when this one was a huge hit, right? So when this one was a huge hit, they said, all right, I guess we got to go to the future and do something with the kids, and they had to come up with that whole idea. So yeah, that was pretty interesting. Yeah, it's a perfect blend. That movie's a perfect blend of comedy, drama, romance, adventure, sci-fi, kind of a musical almost in some ways, It's got everything just blended in there so well.
Even as a little 12-year-old boy, me watching this movie, even a little bit of horror, because I can remember back the first time I watched this movie and seeing Marty or his siblings fading from that photograph, that was a little bit terrifying for me as a 12-year-old.
Absolutely.
Not being exposed to a lot of movies, especially,
For sure. Okay, so our next film we're discussing, my number 5, my top 5 favorite films of all time, is The Empire Strikes Back. So it's a Star Wars sequel. made over at 20th Century Fox, released May 21st, 1980. It is 2 hours and 4 minutes long, had a budget of $30 million. It ended up grossing $549 million at the box office. So yeah, pretty big movie. Of course, the sequel to Star Wars, the first Star Wars sequel. Yeah, definitely one of my favorite movies ever. I mean, again, it's kind of hard for me to separate that original trilogy. Growing up watching those on VHS on loop, all three of them, they all kind of blend together in my mind a little bit. And that was kind of intentional by Lucas. I mean, Lucas really did intend that all as one story. He wrote it all as one story, and then when he realized he didn't have the budget to do that, he just took the first act of that super long script he had and turned that into what we now call Star Wars: A New Hope. And so basically, the success of A New Hope allowed him to complete his story, with Empire and Return of the Jedi. So
okay.
yeah, great sequel. I mean, for me, it does everything a good sequel should do, right? It expands the world that was set up in the first one. We go deeper with the characters. It's a darker film. The first one kind of has that kind of whimsical, kind of goofy silliness to it. And then the second one kind of gets more serious. Again, we explore the characters and their relationships much more. He, of course, had a much bigger budget this time, so he got to go huge with the action sequences. And he was developing his company Industrial Light and Magic, who's to this day known as the greatest visual effects company of all time. They work on all the big movies. So he got to develop the special effects so much further. The first one was groundbreaking. The second one, the same thing. I mean, they broke ground on all kinds of different effects work, essentially. Right. So little bit of background on Star Wars as a whole. I wanted to go over, Lucas, he grew up watching Saturday matinee serials. That's what, that's kind of the era he grew up in, 40s, 50s, where you would go to a theater and you would see the new Flash Gordon episode. Basically, it was kind of like a series, a TV series almost. But they were, kind of longer episodes. There were a bunch of them, and they would all kind of, you would have to come back next week to see what would happen next, that kind of thing. So Flash Gordon, Buck Rogers, definitely had a huge influence on him. That's what he, grew up watching. I've got actually the Flash Gordon DVDs back here, which are tons of fun to watch. Totally different era. All black and white, and you can see the strings on the spaceships flying around, and the whole thing. But tons of fun to watch, and and especially since I was such a Star Wars fan, I wanted to immerse myself in what Lucas was inspired by, and so that's one of the reasons I picked that up. Of course, stuff like Dune, the book Dune was a big influence on Lucas. All kinds
that makes sense.
Yeah. If you watch Dune or you read Dune, you definitely see it. Of course, B movies from the 50s, like The Thing from Another World or The Blob, all these kind of sci-fi things. Forbidden Planet is a big one. And when he was in film school, Akira Kurosawa, he was introduced to the Japanese director, who's hailed as one of the best of all time. And so I got into Kurosawa as well. I've got The Hidden Fortress over here. I have that on Blu-ray. Seven Samurai, Yojimbo. There's tons of great Kurosawa films out there, samurai movies, that he did. And Joseph Campbell, and the whole idea of the hero's journey, the hero with 1,000 faces. That whole idea is all throughout Star Wars. So those are the things that inspired him, to create Star Wars, and you see that kind of mythological idea. It's very much kind of a King Arthur story. The Arthurian legend is kind of mixed in there too. So it's kind of this amalgamation of everything that Lucas grew up reading and watching. But getting again back into the sequel, the first Star Wars movie was a nightmare for Lucas. I mean, he hated every second of making that movie.
Really?
It was, he had to check himself into a hospital at one point. He was exhausted, both mentally and physically. And and I mean, Star Wars, it was a joke. I mean, really, everyone turned him down. He took it to every studio and they thought it was the silliest thing they'd ever heard. you know I mean, you've got space wizards with laser swords, and guys in black cloaks, and princesses and
Yeah,
robots, and I mean, it's bizarre when you really think about it.
that's true. Yeah.
Now it's just part of the culture, but back in 77 it was insane.
Yeah.
He had made THX 1138, his student film, which showed a lot of promise, and then he had a hit with American Graffiti, which is a totally different thing.
Yeah.
Someone dared him to make a comedy, and that's why he made American Graffiti. They're like, I bet you can't make a comedy. He's like, yeah, I can. And
I
so
know,
he went and made
is Ron
American
Howard in
Graffiti.
that? I think
Ron
I
Howard.
know of
Yep.
the movie, but I did not see it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's a great one. Ron Howard, Richard Dreyfuss.
Oh yeah, Dreyfuss
their
is great. Yeah.
yeah, it's their, I think it's their first film. I know obviously Ron
Okay.
Howard had done Andy Griffith, but I think it's his first feature film,
Mm.
and I'm pretty sure it's Dreyfuss's first one too. Yeah,
He
Harrison
was in
Ford's
Close
in it.
Encounters around that time too. I thought that was 77 though.
Dreyfuss is 77. Yeah,
Yeah.
Close Encounters is 77. American Graffiti was 73. So
Oh,
American
okay.
Graffiti came a few years before
Yeah,
that.
yeah. Right.
Yeah, and Harrison Ford is in that one as well.
Really? Okay.
Yeah. He has a small role in that one too. So, yeah, they met. Actually, it's interesting. Harrison Ford moved out to LA to become an actor, kind of got discouraged with the whole thing and became a carpenter to make money. And he
Oh, okay.
started, he made,
I'll
he,
probably
he
work on
built,
sets, I would think.
well, he was building the cabinets in George Lucas's house. That's how they met.
Oh, no kidding.
Yeah, that's how they met. And he said, hey, I'm doing this little movie. If you want a part in it, I'll give you a little part. He's like, okay. And so that's how he got the role in American Graffiti. And then
The pool boy's going to be in it. It's going to be lit.
exactly. So yeah,
Yeah.
that's how that all started. But
Oh,
yeah,
okay.
yeah. So Lucas, had no interest in directing after Star Wars, because even the actors, I mean, even Harrison Ford, Carrie Fisher, Mark Hamill, they all made fun of it on set. They're like, this is ridiculous. I don't even know what I'm saying. What do these words even mean? Harrison is famously quoted as saying, you can write this stuff, but you can't say it, George.
Yeah.
And so
I have a comment about that later. But you're
Yeah.
right. I didn't even know until the end that it wasn't directed by. Maybe I missed that in opening. Sequence,
That's not until the end that comes up. Directed by Irvin Kershner, who
yeah,
Kershner was a mentor of Lucas.
Okay.
So he was
Yeah.
one of his teachers at film school, and so yeah, when Lucas decided not to direct the sequel, he obviously helped write the script. He has a story by credit, right? It's his story.
Okay.
But,
yeah.
He ran to Kershner and said, hey, I have no interest in directing. I'll let it be your movie. You'll be directing it. I'm not going to be on set every day telling you what to do.
Interesting.
But yeah, he let him take the reins because he trusted him and he knew that he had a good knowledge of film and film language. Kershner, I haven't seen a ton of his movies.
I've never heard of him actually.
Yeah, he hasn't done a lot of big stuff. Probably I've seen the biggest two things that he's done other than Empire, which is RoboCop 2 and Never Say Never Again.
Oh,
which is
the Bond film.
Yeah, the unofficial Bond film that Connery is technically his last Bond movie.
Yeah, right.
That he did. So yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah. So it was interesting. I wanted to mention another thing before we jump into the meat of the movie. When Star Wars was made in 77, Lucas had no idea if it was going to be a hit or not. He thought it probably wouldn't be. Most people bet against it.
Yeah.
So in order to kind of prepare to make an even lower budget sequel, because he still wanted to continue the story with the characters, he had Alan Dean Foster, a popular sci-fi novelist, write a book called Splinter of the Mind's Eye. And that book is actually basically an alternate Empire Strikes Back. It's what it would have been if the first movie hadn't blown up and become a big success. And I have that book, and it is excellent. It's a great story. I kind of wish it was made into a movie, although Empire I think is ultimately better. But yeah, Splinter of the Mind's Eye is definitely worth reading, even if you're just a sci-fi fan or a casual Star Wars fan. It's just a really, really solid story. Really, really good one that I enjoyed.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, you know, he hires on, Kershner to direct, and he hires the writers, right? So Lee Brackett was the first person he hired. She was known for classic Hollywood films like The Big Sleep with Humphrey Bogart. She worked a lot with Howard Hawks. Howard Hawks directed that one. She wrote a bunch of his westerns, Rio Bravo, El Dorado, um, and so she had a great way with dialogue. I think that's why Lucas wanted her on, because he knew that was one of his weaknesses. I think Lucas knows this about himself.
Okay. Good.
Why he wrote the prequels, we'll never know. But I think he knew this about himself at the time, and so he brought her on to kind of punch up the dialogue and make sure that that was kind of snappy and fun. You can definitely I think hear that with all the Han and Leia stuff. And then Lawrence Kasdan was the other guy who was brought in after.
Oh, sure, yeah.
Lee
He
Brackett.
became pretty big director himself. Yeah.
Yeah. Kasdan, I mean, he was actually at the time that Lucas was hiring him, he was already working on Raiders of the Lost Ark with Steven Spielberg and Lucas, who wrote the story for that. And so, he was impressed with his work on the Raiders script, and so he said, "Hey, come over and do another draft on Empire." And so, Kasdan, one of my all-time favorite writers. I mean, he's great. Yeah, he's directed, like you said, he's done Wyatt Earp and The Big Chill and all these really, really good movies.
Grand Canyon was really good.
Grand Canyon's excellent. Yeah, for sure.
Yeah.
So that was kind of the behind the scenes team, that was ready to go, and then they were off to the races and started shooting Empire Strikes Back. So we need to talk about your experience with this film, which is very unique to say the least. So again, I grew up watching all the Star Wars movies from before I can remember. Your experience with Star Wars is a little different.
It is. My first movie was at age 12, and I got to look up the name of that movie. I think it was, I can't remember the name of it, but it was like a low budget science fiction movie, and I thought it was pretty neat. But I rewatched it years later. It was terrible. And then that's the one with Molly Ringwald. I should have looked up the name. Anyway, and then the second movie I went to was Return of the Jedi, and I thought it was fantastic. It was amazing. I didn't know movies like that could be made or existed.
Right.
That was tremendous.
Yeah.
And then 38 years later, I watch Empire Strikes Back. I did watch Star Wars for the first time, episode 4, back in 99 with the re-release.
Okay. Yeah. 97.
Didn't really like it. So then they also re-released Empire. Like, it's come out, I think, a few times probably over the years. Sure. To bring in a few more bucks.
Right.
And but I did not see it until this last weekend. And so I've never seen the film after all this time.
Wow.
And it's and I think it was filmed like 43 years ago or something like that, right? And so I'm seeing it almost a half century after it was made.
Yeah. That's incredible. Yeah, you have such a unique experience with Star Wars that's just so different from anyone I've met, and I think that's great. That makes for a unique perspective. So now, what's the verdict? What did you think of The Empire Strikes Back?
Okay, well, let me start with what I liked.
Sure.
I can appreciate. I really like what Henson did. With all of his creatures and every film and everything I've seen him do. I mean, obviously that's good stuff. The Yoda. I mean, the other creatures for the close-ups. I mean, you really can't beat that with CGI. No. So I appreciate that.
For sure.
That's all good stuff. I think I don't know how, I probably should watch the making of. I don't really know how they did all of the outer space scenes.
Sure.
And I wonder if they've been enhanced by CGI. I wanted to ask you about that.
Right.
Because some of them just look amazing. The detail and that, I liked all the outer space stuff. That was good.
Yeah.
For the most part, I liked all of the Luke and Vader interactions.
Sure.
Lightsaber fight isn't, anything to, stand up and cheer at. But I mean,
Okay.
for 1980 it was, I'm sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was decent. It
Yeah.
wasn't bad. It was
Right.
decent.
Right.
Obviously, I kind of knew the big reveal about the familial
Right.
aspect of of what happened
Right.
with them
Right.
them two.
Yeah.
And so I mean, that's what I liked.
Okay.
And then I'll tell you ultimately what I thought of the film in a minute here.
Okay.
But
Okay.
I guess what I didn't like was a lot of what plagued the first film. I thought, which was it goes more to the style of films maybe back in the 70s, but um, I didn't really enjoy a lot of the dialogue, and I know Lucas probably was responsible for a lot of it. Some of it was just bizarre, I guess is the best way to say it. Like some of the interactions, like some of the ways that Han Solo was getting angry about stuff for seemingly no reason. And then at one point, um, he's arguing. I don't know why he's arguing with Leia. She's this innocent person, and he keeps like trying to pursue her, and it's a bit predatory. But anyway, the way he acts. But no, but I like his character. I mean, obviously he's one of the best parts of the series, I think. But um, at one point, he's yelling at her, and then she's yelling back, and she calls him names. She calls him, and I wrote it down. She calls him Laser Brain, and then she calls him a Nerf herder. And they're speaking English, but adults don't talk this way, And then the thought goes through my head, well, I've heard this before about Star Wars, that Star Trek is for adults, Star Wars is more of like for kids. Except 5 minutes before that, you got Luke disemboweling a large animal graphically on the screen. This is not really something for small children, at least. And so it doesn't really see, those kind of things don't really they don't really make sense to me,
Okay.
So I have kind of some issues with the difficult wording and script choices in the film. So
Okay.
and I know that might be harsh, but I've
Sure.
never understood, and I know that you like the writing, so I'm not
Yeah.
saying all the writing is bad, and it's
Right.
not.
Right.
But I don't really get why it people think it's so great. Like it's
Okay.
serviceable. Like a
Right.
lot of it is, oh, look out, or watch out for that, and that kind of stuff that you
Sure.
get in action movies.
Right.
But a lot of, not all the dialogue, but a lot of the dialogue is difficult to absorb and feel like it's honest and what people would really say in real life. And
Okay.
and
Okay. Sure.
you know what I
Sure.
mean? So
Sure.
that kind of pulls me out of the experience. So let's see. Other questions or issues I had. Um, like stop motion. It's tough to watch that in a movie like this because I get why they used it, and it certainly was better than maybe really crude CGI. Maybe would have been the other choice, or something like that. So I'm sure it worked and it was great for 1980, but I have to judge it based on how that compares to a modern film with CGI. And I've got my own criticisms of CGI. I'd almost rather have it always be something that's tangible and a real thing instead of CGI. But if I'm looking at a modern action film uh, that's going to have a CGI anything, and you compare that to stop motion, the CGI is always going to look better. So again, it's not that it was a bad film or that it was a bad choice back then, but I'm just saying when I see that, I'm like, oh, that's definitely an old movie, and that's not like up to spec of what I want out of my sort of action scenes. And there
Sure.
wasn't even a lot of stop motion.
Yeah.
What are those big tall things that walk through the snow and they had to tie up the legs of it and that kind of thing?
Tauntauns.
Hauntauns?
Tauntauns. Yeah.
Okay. The same things you scoop salad with?
Kind of. Yeah.
Or no, what are those called? I don't know.
Those are tongs.
Those are tongs, not the same thing.
Right.
I yeah, so those were, I didn't realize those were stop motion until I mean, this is the first time I've seen the movie, so
Yeah.
I thought those were in other movies, and I don't know if they use stop motion for the other ones. But so, and again, that just kind of makes me feel like this was a great movie for its time. But I mean, I have to be honest. I have to judge it based on how much enjoyment
Sure.
am I getting out of watching a movie that has to use, unfortunately, sort of remedial technology or great technology for its time,
Right.
compared to a very smooth um, CGI scene of countless modern films.
Sure.
So again, that doesn't mean
Sure.
that the movie's awful, but
Yeah. Yeah.
so where I wrap all this up to is I guess I'm right at about a 5 out of 10
Okay.
for
Okay.
enjoyability factor. That's
Okay.
what I'm rating it on. And I
Okay.
guess if I had to say, 5 out of 10, would I tell someone to go see it or not? I would say someone of today's generation or something. I would say I don't really like. I'm sort of like 5, but more like on
Right.
the low side of 5, if that
Okay.
makes any
Okay.
sense.
Sure. Sure.
That's
Sure.
what I've got.
I appreciate your honesty. I think that's great. It's great. It's always great to get unique perspectives on movies. And like you said, you're so far removed from the release of the film, and you're not, like I was a 5-year-old watching it on my living room TV. You know, so yeah, no, that's great. Those are all totally valid, of course, points. Art, movies are art. Art is subjective. So that's
Correct.
totally
Yeah.
totally fine, totally fine. I'm a little disappointed you didn't like it a little bit more, but those are all great points that you make. And like you said with the technology, um, yeah, like I said, it was groundbreaking in 1980. I mean,
Yeah.
no one had ever seen anything
Right.
like it.
Right.
Even people like you mentioned the stop motion, who had seen stop motion in movies before, like all the Ray Harryhausen movies, the old,
Yeah.
Jason and the Argonauts and all that stuff.
Yeah.
This was the greatest stop motion that they'd ever seen,
Yeah.
and
I have
so
no doubt. I have no doubt.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And so
Right.
yeah, I always try, and I know it's hard for some people. For me, I don't know why it's easy. Maybe because I grew up watching old movies
Probably.
like
Yeah.
that. It is
Probably.
easy for me to put my mind back then and go,
Hmm.
wow, this was crazy back then, or whatever.
Hmm.
Um, so yeah, the special effects side of things, I can totally understand why someone would watch it and go, wow, this is just ancient and looks like a mess.
Well, I've heard the argument, yeah, but you don't get it. That's as good as, that was amazing back then. And I understand that, but I can't pretend like I like that better than Independence Day or something like that.
That's
I
fine.
mean, I'm
That's
just being
fine.
honest. I don't know
No,
what to
that's
say.
totally fine. Like I
I mean,
said,
I get
that's
it.
yeah,
If we were back in 1980, that
yeah,
probably would be the best movie I'd ever seen,
sure, right, exactly,
So
exactly, sure, sure. No, and as far as on the technology side, I like what you said about you prefer something tangible to CG, and I totally agree with that. That's
yeah.
why a lot of movies, take for instance the newer Star Wars movies,
Hmm.
definitely have brought that back to blending CG and using CG more as an enhancement than it's just CG.
Yeah.
Like
Like I
Lucas
remember
did.
when they changed Yoda to a CG, and I thought, and you can tell, you
Yeah,
can definitely tell. And did they ever, like, I haven't seen the most recent Star Wars film, the last one that was just made, but did they ever change that back, or did they ever like start using puppets again, or some kind of?
they did. They did. In The
They
Last
did. Okay,
Jedi, in Episode 8, Yoda
that's the
shows
one.
up and he is a puppet.
Really?
Yeah, and it
Okay.
is
Well,
it
there
is
you
Frank
go. There you
Oz.
go.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Nice.
So yeah, they learned from the mistakes of the prequels, I think, and look, the prequels are revolutionary in their own right. I mean, and people don't realize the prequels
It's
actually
true.
use a ton of miniatures and
Yeah.
they
Yeah.
enhance them with CG.
Yeah.
But yeah, the green screen thing, he just overused it, and I
Yeah.
get it. He
Yeah.
was at that point in his career, he was more about pushing the technology forward,
Right.
and Lucas has always been
Right.
about that. But
Yeah.
and so but yeah, again, back to the technology. It's just I totally get why someone watching it today would go, I prefer Avengers Endgame over this.
Let's
So
talk about those miniatures for a minute,
yeah,
since you brought it up, because I
yeah,
forgot to mention that the miniatures in these movies, in all of them, they're just outstanding, like
yeah,
way better than they even needed to be, probably, right?
right,
And I
right.
love miniatures. I think they're awesome. I think
They
they're
are.
cool.
Yeah.
When I was in California, I went to Legoland, and they have this mini land where they have these mini reproductions of cities and stuff. It's awesome.
Wow.
But this is way more detailed than that. And
Yeah.
so I was watching this. When I was watching Empire, I'm looking at the ships, as
Yeah.
they've got the flyby, in space, and you can see the ship and all the
Right.
detail
Right.
on the outside. And it occurred to me, and I just think it was more humorous than anything. But why does the outside of the ship need to be so detailed? Because you think about it, like the inside is probably where you need to have certain like
Right.
insets and things like that.
Right.
But I mean, they look really cool. But I think
Yeah.
most ships are probably pretty flat on the outside because it's more practical.
Right.
But it
Sure.
was almost like
Sure.
showing off, and
Yeah.
I can really appreciate that, because the amount of
Sure.
detail, like I said, they probably could have done way less detail and it still would have looked great. They
Yeah.
obviously hired probably the best miniature person in the world
Yeah.
to do these things.
Yeah, absolutely. Their team at ILM, yeah, it was all the best guys, and it was all guys that again they were innovators because no one had really
Yeah.
done miniatures like that before. So
Yeah.
yeah, they were
Right.
definitely ahead of the curve on everything they were doing. Um, so yeah, the effects of the movie honestly don't affect me one bit when I'm watching it. Maybe it's like I'm five again. I don't know. I don't know what happens, but in my mind, it's just like, and again, going back to the thing about preferring something tangible to not, I in some way I watch some movies and I go, that's definitely CGI.
Hmm.
That's definitely fake. That's definitely a green screen background.
Yeah.
And so in some ways, I prefer a movie like this,
Hmm.
um, where everything was there. There was something they shot on set that's not digital. There's no digital, nothing in these movies
Right.
except when you're talking about the special editions, which unfortunately are the only ones we can watch now. But
Yeah.
they use them to enhance things, and I don't mind. Empire is probably the one they use at least on.
Really. Okay.
Um, but my wife actually found me this is the last time that the original theatrical versions were available was in a 2004 DVD set,
Oh, really?
and
Okay.
the so it's a 2 disc set. One is the special edition. The other is a bonus disc with the original theatrical version on it.
Mm,
And it's the only
okay.
time it's ever been released on DVD. There's never been a Blu-ray release or anything. So you can't
Interesting.
watch it in HD, unfortunately. But um,
Yeah.
yeah. Um, so
Well,
anyways,
I think we both agree though that the best CGI is when you don't know it's there,
yeah,
because I've
absolutely.
watched the making of in certain movies. Um, and A Beautiful Mind comes to mind because
Okay.
there's that scene where the baby is being left alone. Russell Crowe's character leaves his child alone in a tub, and the
Okay.
water fills up, and the water actually fills up like I think past the baby's mouth, and then the mom, scoops him up at the last second,
Okay.
and that was digital water, and that never occurred to
Wow.
me. And when I was watching that
Right.
film, I'm like, I can't believe that they let that
Oh,
happen with the baby.
right.
That was awfully dangerous.
Yeah.
And it was even back in 2000. That was really
Yeah.
great CGI, and I think to use it where you can't even tell,
Yeah.
it's not easy. But great directors, Ron Howard being one, finds a way. And so
Sure. Sure.
I don't love CGI heavy
Right.
Starship Troopers. Give me
Yeah.
everything you got CGI.
Right.
Yeah, I mean
Right.
that's not great either.
No.
That's for
No.
sure.
Yeah, there definitely has to be a balance, and that's what, again, hopefully, and uh again, the new Star Wars movies are a good example of that. The MCU, especially the early MCU movies, I think did a really good job of that. I think they have started relying on it a little bit too much recently. Um, but yeah, that's just, comes with the times. And as it gets better, they're going to use it more and it's going to look better. But yeah, there's something about just having something there, that you can, again, even if you're just enhancing what's there, I think that is kind of the best option when it comes to effects.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Um,
And even Lucas agrees because he's gone back and used CGI in some of his films. I can't tell
sure.
where, but I can, like I said, I can really appreciate some of those space shots, and I
Yeah.
don't know where else he used it, but
Yeah,
it's good
yeah.
stuff.
The one that sticks out in my mind in Empire is when Han and Leia arrive in Cloud City, and the Falcon is going through Cloud City. That is an addition. That is a new scene
Oh,
with
okay.
CGI.
Okay.
Yeah, I think in the original they just kind of you just kind of see them swoop in and then land.
Yeah.
Um,
That made me think of a question I had for you.
yeah,
So Darth Vader, at one point early in the movie, he's talking on a FaceTime call with some admiral, right?
yeah,
And he doesn't like what the admiral tells him, and so the admiral all of a sudden starts choking, and he chokes him out.
right,
I don't know if he's like 10 galaxies away and he can see the guy so he can choke him out. So
right.
if he can do that, then why doesn't, when Han Solo is taking off in his ship and he's 50 feet from him, why doesn't he just choke out Han Solo on the way out of the little area they're in?
Great
Too
question.
critical? I mean, I don't know.
Too critical. You're thinking about this way too much.
Yeah, it's probably up there. Uh, yeah, and along those lines, I had another question about Vader.
Yeah.
What's I know the breathing noise is just so iconic you don't even really think about it, but I was listening to it, which sounds weird. I was listening to the breathing or whatever that is,
Yeah.
the noise he makes,
Yeah. It's breathing.
but he
Yeah.
still talks, and the breathing noise does not go away or get affected. So
Right.
if you're on oxygen or something, I would think that is that what it is? Is he's on oxygen? But wouldn't when
Yeah.
you're breathing and I mean when you're talking, wouldn't that halt it a little bit or slow it as you hold your breath a little bit for pauses and things like that? What's going on with the
Yeah.
breathing?
I'm not sure. That's a great question. That's a great
I need to
question.
know the answers to this.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't know. I mean, I'm wondering if like maybe it's I mean it's technology, we have no idea how he's doing
Yeah,
anything, right? So is it
right.
like one lung is always breathing and then the other one is the one he talks with? I don't know.
Possible
That's just
theory. Yeah,
that's a
I like
theory.
it.
That's my
Yeah.
theory.
Okay. Okay.
Who knows how bodies work in Star Wars? I mean,
Yeah. Right. Right.
human body in
Okay.
Star Wars could be totally different from ours. I have no idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, that is one of the questions I had. I didn't know if that was
Gotcha.
already figured out or.
Right. Yeah, so Empire, it stands out for me as a sequel because again, it's building on what the first film did. It's taking it kind of all to new heights. The challenge of a second film, I think, is you know you're not starting the story, you're not introducing the characters, but you can't end the story yet either, right? So you kind of have to maneuver around those things, and it's kind of helpful because the groundwork is laid. You kind of get the rules of the universe and who the characters are, and so the second film, what you're really able to do, I think, why a lot of sequels are great. The great sequels are as great as they are, is because they take the characters to new places and they really develop the relationships between the characters and take them on a journey, because you're not starting the journey but you're not ending the journey, so you're kind of in that middle section where you're kind of creating and crafting the middle part of that arc for
Sure.
each character. And I think they do it so well, with all the characters, especially the big three: Luke, Han, and Leia. So you've got Luke, kind of a whiny farm boy in the first one, kind of, he's the character that asks all the questions. He's basically the audience, right? He's our way in, and that's really what makes him a great hero. And I think the same could be said about Marty McFly, is that he's kind of trying to figure everything out. He's kind of
Sure.
trying to like
Yeah.
kind of on his toes the whole time, and asking questions, figuring out what's going on, and what he needs to do, and that kind of thing. And it's not that he's void of personality, but I would say that he doesn't have a big personality, because I think Lucas wanted us to very much be able to relate to him and put ourselves in his shoes. And so
Yeah.
that's why I think Mark Hamill toes that line so well of giving Luke a personality, but making him so that he's we're able to kind of go on the journey with him. Um, and then of course you have Harrison Ford, who's super charismatic, and he gets to be kind of the big heroic tough guy or whatever. But this story very much is a romantic story, right, between him and Leia. And so you have Leia, who's kind of all business. She's all about the rebellion and fighting the Empire, and she doesn't care about anything else.
Right. Clearly.
Han, right? So Han is the scoundrel. He's kind of in it for himself, especially in the first one. In the second one, we get, early on that he really cares about Luke. He goes out to rescue his friend in the freezing
True.
cold.
Yeah.
I think that's a great, dynamic, that relationship, because it doesn't say it in the opening crawl, but there's been 3 years that have passed in the universe since the original film. So these characters have gone on adventures together. They've, seen the galaxy together. They've been through a ton. And I think you get that sense, at the opening of the film, Luke and Han are out there riding around, and
right,
calling each other buddy, and they're good friends at this point, and there's all these little references, like when Han tells the general he has to leave because they ran into a bounty hunter that was coming after him, and he's, Jabba the Hutt has a price on his head. He's living with this death sentence he's got to go take care of. He references a little bit later, when we were, I think he says, when we were in the South Passage or something like that, she expressed her true feelings for me, and so we don't know what that encounter exactly was, but we know that there's history here. And I like a movie like that, and even the original Star Wars like that, it very much just drops you into a story. It doesn't really give you, you have the opening crawl, so you kind of have an idea of what's going on, but it doesn't over explain things.
It doesn't. I hate over explaining. I agree.
Oh man, that can just kill a movie when you have just a character just giving exposition on, who they are, where they've been.
The movie Old.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly. Yeah. So I love that they just kind of drop us in, just kind of got to catch up and figure it out. And so, they do that really well, I think.
I agree.
In that movie, especially, the story, again, it's more about the relationships in this one, and character development. So Luke, he's risen up through the ranks a little bit. He is a leader in the rebellion now. And so is Han. Of course, Leia is. And Luke's story, I like the whole structure of the movie, because you have them all together at the beginning. They split apart, right? When the Empire invades the Rebel base, they all split apart. Luke has that vision of Obi-Wan telling him to go to Dagobah, meet Yoda. He goes off to Dagobah with R2, right? You have that storyline, and then you have, Han, Leia, Chewie, and 3PO in the Falcon escaping the Empire. So the Empire is chasing Han and Leia. Luke is off training with Yoda. And you have that, they're juxtaposed really well, because Han and Leia are constantly in motion. They're constantly trying to escape. They're going here through the asteroid field, the space slug, the whole thing. And they're always like something crazy is happening to them. Whereas Luke, he's kind of stuck in one place. His X-Wing crashes in the swamp. He's stuck there. It's kind of much more quiet, a little eerie, where they're on Dagobah in the swamp. There's that creature that swallows R2 and spits him out. And then, he meets this little green guy, and he's like, "No, this guy's messing around with me. What's this guy doing?" And then you find out, of course, that is Yoda. And then, again, going back and forth between those two, I think it just works really well for the pacing of the movie. I think it's extremely well paced. The intercutting between the two. I
was not bored. Yeah, that's good. I was not. The first Star Wars was a little too slow for me. But I did not find myself going, let's speed this up. At least it was entertaining. Yeah.
Good. That's good to hear. Because I think that's a major strength of the movie. I think it's super well, structured in the screenplay, and the editing is excellent.
Gotcha.
So, the dialogue you brought up, I like the dialogue again, and you brought up a great point, is that it's not really how people talk, right? It's not like how a regular person would talk to another person.
At times, yeah.
Right, at times. So of course, all the weird Nerf herder references, and references to these things that were like, what is that?
It's like a 60s sitcom or something. That's the kind of level of humor at times. And I didn't think they needed it, but for some reason they felt like they wanted to go that direction with the tone. And so, well, again, most people don't have a problem with it, but
Yeah, I really don't. I again, it's, like you said, it's meant for children essentially. I mean, Star Wars, the whole thing, it is meant for a much younger audience, right? Um, the violent stuff, I get that maybe it's not for a super young audience. I think it's probably meant for, like, I don't know, I would say like 8 and up, maybe, or something,
Yeah,
7 and
probably
up,
because the
somewhere in there.
disemboweling. I mean, I don't want my
It's pretty
3-year-old to
intense. No.
ask me about that one. You know.
No, right, exactly. Yeah, what is that? Well, that's tauntaun guts, honey.
Yeah, that's all. That's all.
Right,
Nothing to worry about.
right. So yeah, but
That'll be our shelter.
right, exactly. So yeah, you had the first one come out in 77. This one did come out in 80, so it is 3 years later. So, you know, a kid who saw it when he was 10, the first one when he was 10, would now be 13. So I think Lucas is very much thinking about that. Like,
Yeah,
the movies do mature as they go a little bit.
sure.
So this
Yeah,
one is definitely darker. As we mentioned, it's definitely got um, more intense psychological themes. Um,
sure. Yeah,
of course, the big reveal at the end is a pretty intense moment, um,
yeah.
happening right after Luke gets his hand chopped off. Also,
Right.
so
Both of these have some kind of whacked out things that happen with family. You know,
they
both
do,
of these
they do.
movies.
The whole Star Wars saga really is about this
I mean,
very
Back to the
dysfunctional
Future
family.
and Empire. I'm
And Back
saying
to the Future. Yeah, yeah,
that's what I
yeah.
was saying to those two. Yeah, they're both
Right, right.
similar in that regard too. Yeah,
You're totally right. You're totally right. Absolutely. Yeah, it is a lot about fathers and sons. The whole thing.
right.
Yeah, in a kind of weird way.
And hot
Um,
moms. Yeah,
and moms, yes, sure.
yeah,
Um, so yeah, again, it's a if Star Wars is really at its heart, it's a fairy tale. That's always how I've seen it. I think that's very much how Lucas looks at it. So I've heard him talk about it before. It's very much, a kind of coming of age, you know, fairy tale.
yeah. That's for sure. Yeah,
Instead of Once Upon a Time, it's a long time ago in a galaxy far, far away. So it's very much has that
yeah,
vibe to it.
yeah,
Very mythological, very much, a hero's journey type of thing.
yeah.
Um, and that's why I think it's so universally beloved. The world over,
Mm,
people in other cultures really like Star
right.
Wars,
Sure.
because it's not quintessentially American necessarily. you
Yeah,
know
that's true. Yeah,
it's very much it's a universal theme of
yeah.
what it takes to be a hero. Sacrifice, redemption, all these themes run throughout it, and these are just themes that make any story great. And they're all at the forefront of Star Wars, which is why I think
Yeah,
it,
that's true.
it works so
That's
well.
true. Yeah, I got one more question for you.
Sure.
You know, in the last act of the movie, C3PO becomes a backpack,
Right.
and why? Okay, here's a question. This is very blasphemous. Okay, why save C3PO? What has he ever done to help things? He's
That is
basically Jar
great.
Jar Binks, right? I mean, he's there for humor, so I
Sure.
get that. But the characters themselves aren't laughing a whole lot. So
Right.
why are the characters? Why is someone carrying this guy around and jeopardizing their own life?
Yeah,
What's the draw? What's the draw there with C3PO?
that's a great question. I, I think 3PO is hilarious. I think this is actually might be Anthony Daniels' best performance as 3PO. I
Yeah,
think
I'm
he has
not
a
knocking
lot
the
of
performance. I'm
no,
just
sure,
saying,
sure, no. Uh,
why are
the
the
char-
characters saving him?
the characters
Why
in
do
the
they care?
universe,
Yeah,
it's a valid point, because Han is very annoyed with 3PO throughout
yeah,
this film.
yeah.
You know, yeah, he I don't know. I wonder if 3PO, they always look at 3PO as kind of like a tool who can, because fluent in 6 million forms of communication. So he can talk with not only any alien they encounter, but any machine they encounter.
Hmm.
So they may look at him as, this guy's kind of got to come along with us because he can be pretty
He could
useful.
come in handy
He
later.
could come in
Yeah,
handy.
probably.
I don't know that he does. Well, he does talk with the Falcon multiple times and tells them how to fix the Falcon. So
There you go.
he does come in handy there in the story.
Yeah, yeah,
And you just I get people hate Jar Jar. I grew up with Jar Jar. He was like the prequels were like kind of like my Star Wars because those are the ones I saw in theaters when I was
Yeah,
little.
yeah, right.
And so I've always liked the comic relief character in Star Wars. I thought him and Jar Jar both worked. I think 3PO definitely works better.
I think he worked.
Um,
Yeah, I like C-3PO better.
yeah,
I sort of hated Jar Jar, and I actually have
right.
some good things to say about the prequels, but
Okay, cool.
I didn't like Jar Jar partly because I didn't think the CGI was great. They jumped ahead a little bit with that.
It's understandable. Yeah, he was I think the first CGI character because he was before Gollum.
Yeah, you might be right about that.
Yeah, I think he
It
was the
just it didn't
first
look
fully
quite good
CG
enough
character, motion
in a movie
capture.
that had some great visuals.
Yeah,
Certain things like that, especially at times, right? Because they don't animate
right,
this all in one day, and it's not
right,
all the same animator. So
right.
at times the CGI and him look bad. But anyway, that's probably for a different discussion.
Yeah, yeah, I
Yeah.
gotcha.
All right, fair enough. Bring him
Yeah,
along. Bring C-3PO along because of utility,
yes,
because he might bail us out at some point.
right,
We'll carry him up
right,
this mountainside on my
right,
back
right.
and
Yes,
hope that doesn't
exactly.
lead to my death.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
That's the character reason I would give. The story reason,
Yeah.
the movie reason is just because you need a guy that's kind of funny and that
Yeah,
kind of
exactly.
and that kind
Sure.
of just throws a wrench in everything. Like I love the moment, Han and Leia's kiss, like a big moment that he just
Uh-huh.
totally ruins.
Yeah,
I
right,
love that
right.
stuff. I think that works
Sure.
really well.
Yeah.
So yeah, that's fun. Um, yeah, I think all the characters are utilized really well in this film too. Again, R2, is a fun companion. R2 is really there on Dagobah just so Luke has, I think, someone to talk to before Yoda shows up. Essentially,
Yeah.
you
So he's
know,
not talking to himself because we
exactly,
yeah, it's not
exactly,
Castaway. We need
right. It's
or it is
Wilson.
it
Yeah,
is
it's
kind of it's Wilson of
right,
Castaway. Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
Yeah. Chewie, I think, is well used as well. I think he's fun. He has a lot of fun moments in this.
Hmm.
Just again, didn't mention this at the top. I meant to. That I think of film primarily as visual storytelling, and so when you can have a moment stands out in my mind when Han's gone out to save Luke on Hoth on the ice planet, and the rebels say, it's getting too cold. We got to shut the doors. So they shut the doors, and he lets out that big howl. You know,
Hmm.
that's a great moment of you can tell he's kind of in distraught at that
Yeah.
time.
Right.
So
Right.
things like that I like. It's a great movie
Okay.
visually. We mentioned the effects, of course, are incredible. Um, the score can't not mention Williams. I mean, John Williams, one of the best, really.
Yeah.
I mean, I don't know if anyone really can come close to him at this point. I mean, he's crafted so many just such recognizable, iconic themes. This is the first time we hear the Imperial March. So Darth
Mm,
Vader's
okay.
theme, dum
Yeah.
dum 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 da dum. That's one that he wrote specifically for this movie.
Yeah. I really liked his work on the prequels. Actually, I mean, two. But yeah, the themes in Star Wars are great. I liked his theme in Harry Potter. I wouldn't say that he's written more scores that I've liked than anybody else, though. I mean, I probably put 20 people ahead of him just
Okay,
because, you know, I don't think his style is to create, sweeping melodies that carry out throughout an entire movie. At least he hasn't been given that opportunity. I mean, it's a lot of the same themes over and over, and they're great themes, but
right.
I guess what I'm saying is it's a great theme for the series and what he does with Phantom Menace and those two, but I wouldn't say he's my favorite composer,
Okay,
but I'm not
okay,
trying to knock him either. Does that make
okay.
sense?
I got you. Yeah, yeah, yeah. No. He's just hailed. Yeah, I mean, as one of the best, and I listen.
Yeah.
I get scores on CD,
Hmm.
so it forces me to listen to the whole thing,
Yeah, yeah.
and so I would push back on that a little and say that I think throughout his film Star Wars, I mean, he's done stuff like Schindler's List though too. Like
Hmm.
he's done Saving Private Ryan. Um,
But I wouldn't say that like there's certain I mean Hans's name will come up, Hans Zimmer's name will
of
come up a lot,
course,
I'm sure.
yeah.
But I mean I could name 10 to 20 that just impacted me in a huge way
Okay,
of
gotcha.
his scores. And I mean I think John Williams, there's probably three that I would say
Okay,
that are ultra memorable because I watched Schindler's
gotcha.
List,
Yeah.
but I think it was one of those probably. Actually, I remember the main theme,
Yeah.
But other than that, it just kind of blended in. I
Yeah.
wouldn't say it was one that I definitely didn't go and buy that CD,
Sure.
you know.
Sure.
So I criticize a little bit because everybody just assumes he's the best composer
Right.
ever,
Sure. Sure.
and it's because he got there first, you know.
Right.
And so I push back on that because I'm
Right.
thinking, what else do you remember, you know?
Right. 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 No,
and
I
and
hear
some
you. I
people
hear
can
you.
name it, but a lot of people can't. You know, they just know
Sure.
that it's Star Wars, so there you go. No one's
Right.
any better than that.
Right. 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 No, yeah, no, I hear that for sure. Yeah, I would put Superman and Raiders up in there as well. As great. Just to me, he has more themes that I can hum just off the top of my head. I mean, anyone can hum Jaws. I mean, it's just kind of
That's
the
true.
the
That is
sim
iconic.
the
Yeah, that's true.
simplicity of it, and just the instantly recognizable
Yeah, I
stuff. I
forgot
think
he
he did.
did the Raiders music.
Yeah,
Yeah,
Raiders of
I
the
haven't
Lost
seen the
Ark,
film, but
and
I know the music. Yeah,
yeah, Close
that's
Encounters. I
true.
mean, he's done pretty much every Spielberg movie.
Yeah,
So,
yeah.
any Spielberg movie that has kind of those recognizable themes, that was John Williams.
Hmm.
But yeah, Hans Zimmer, I mean, he's incredible. He does great stuff. I
I
just
mean,
again, I Go
James
ahead.
Newton Howard has done
Yeah,
5 or 10 that are
sure.
amazing. I mean, so I mean, I shouldn't. When you bring up some of the other ones, I'm like, oh
Yeah,
yeah, he did do
yeah.
the Indiana Jones series. You
Right.
know, I mean, that's
Yeah,
pretty big. So
yeah,
yeah, I probably
yeah. It's
discounted
not
him a little bit too much, but
right. Yeah, it's not just
yeah,
Star Wars. That's, I mean, his most popular. But I mean, I can easily hum the Raiders one, the Superman one, the Jaws one.
yeah, that's true. That's
There's
true.
there's quite a
That is a
few
good
that he's
point.
done that were pretty iconic. But I
That's
mean, guys
true.
like Zimmer, and you mentioned Horner, and there's tons of them that do great work. I don't know how many of them I could hum off the top of my head, but so yeah. Anyways, Williams,
Yeah.
his stuff is great in it. Cinematography, I could go on and on about the whole film. I
Okay.
wanted to get your quick thoughts, it being your first viewing, on just the performances overall, because I find that the performances in this one are like totally another level from Star Wars: A New Hope.
You mean
Um,
acting performances?
correct,
Yeah.
correct.
Well, what you just said, I would say the performances are a little better. I don't know. I didn't love some of Luke's acting in the first one, and I can't say if it's the writing or the acting, but some of the
Sure.
scenes I just didn't really like very much at all.
Yeah.
Um, in episode 4, I'm talking about.
Yeah.
So this one, I thought there were a few parts that I don't understand the motivations of the characters. Like
Mm.
Hans is just angry at Leia because he can't get to her, and some of it
Right.
just seemed a bit much, but
Right.
it's acted very well. Yeah, I will say I didn't really find flaws with the acting. And I can't say the same for the prequels, which again, I have some good things I can say about them. That the acting is just absolutely, as you know, I'm not telling you anything you don't already know. The acting is atrocious at times in the prequels, but
Mm.
not throughout, but at
Sure.
times, even
Sure.
by good actors. Hayden
Yeah.
Christensen's a good actor.
Right.
But I didn't really have a problem with the performances in this movie, no.
Good.
And that's part of the
Good.
reason why I went to a 5. I mean, it's not like everything about it's bad, you know.
Sure.
I
Sure.
sat through it, it entertained me,
Right.
you know. So
That's
no, I
great.
did not have any problem with the performances of the actors
Good.
with the page at it as it was written.
Sure. Sure. I hear you. I hear you. Gotcha. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. They all kind of stand out to me. I think Carrie Fisher is kind of underrated in it. Like, people don't talk about her as much. She's excellent throughout the movie. She's kind of like, to me, like The Rock throughout the thing, because like Luke and Han are very much having more character development to me. I mean, and Han and
Yeah.
Leia are kind of connected because their stories interwoven together, but um yeah, I think she's a little underrated in it. I think Mark Hamill does a great job acting against, for the majority of the movie, a robot and a puppet is all he had to work
True.
with,
Yeah.
you
That's
know.
true. I
And I
like him
mean,
so much better in the next film, you know. I mean, that's where, you know, I think it goes
he's
up another level to me,
yeah,
you know, but
he
I
does.
haven't
He
watched that one
does.
in a while either. So
Yeah, yeah. He definitely, there's definitely a progression there for
it's
sure. You
completely
can see
different than what he plays in the first 2 movies.
it is. It
And
is.
I, you know, I told you this ahead of time, but I didn't say it here. But watching that movie first, I thought the other 2 movies were like that. And so when I watched Star Wars, when I watched it in like 98 or 99, I thought, oh, this is going to be great. I'm going
Yeah.
to see more of
Right.
the further adventures of Luke Skywalker kicking
Right.
butt.
Right.
And that
Right.
doesn't happen, but that's okay.
No, no, it doesn't, unfortunately. You can watch The Mandalorian and see a little bit of that, though.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, you can. Um, so yeah, he's great in it, and Frank Oz as Yoda. I don't know of another performance like that that's puppeteered
Mhm.
and voiced by an actor who
That was really
just,
good. Yeah.
I mean,
Yeah.
he knocks it out of the park. I mean,
Mhm.
I actually know people who watched the movie and I was like, yeah, wasn't that great puppet work? And they were like, puppet? What? What puppet? I was like, well, Yoda. He's a puppet. They were like, what? Oh, I thought that was an actor in makeup. Like, no, no,
Oh,
that
wow.
was a puppet.
But
Yeah,
see, that's why puppets are so much better
they
than
are.
CGI.
They
Yeah.
are. Yeah, for sure. I mean,
Uh-huh.
incredible work. I mean, and the team that put it together. I mean, I was noticing rewatching it, his eyes, but also like his brow
Mhm.
would move. I mean, like details that just boggle my mind when I watch it back. And it to me, it
Yeah.
just holds up so well.
Mhm.
And yeah, comparing it to CGI Yoda, it's better. It's better.
I
It really
agree.
is.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah. Yeah. So again, all the performances are great. David Prowse as Darth Vader has that big presence. James Earl Jones' voice is iconic, of course.
The Emperor's
Um,
scary. Yeah.
what's that?
The Emperor is scary.
The
Isn't that
Emperor.
the
Yeah,
yeah,
he had a
yeah,
scene in
yeah.
this. So this is the introduction of the
Mhm.
Emperor.
Yeah.
And yeah, the special edition, they came in and had Ian McDermott film it. In the original, it's a totally different actor with makeup, and a
Oh,
different voice. So yeah, they hadn't cast the Emperor yet. They're like, well, it's just one scene. We'll just have this guy do it, and we'll figure out something else for the next one.
really? Huh.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's really interesting to watch that scene in the original version because it's all the same dialogue. I don't think they changed
Yeah.
any of the dialogue, but yeah, it is a
Okay.
different actor, who's just but he's very much cloaked, so you can't
Yeah.
really see
Yeah.
him anyway. He very much
Yeah.
has the hood on.
Okay.
So
Huh.
yeah, yeah, interesting little change they made there. Um, so yeah, again, great performances. Oh, I wanted to get your thoughts on. Well, you kind of mentioned the ending. Um, the There's an interesting story behind the final moment with Han and Leia, um, where he's about to be put into carbonite, and she says, "I love you," and he says, "I know." That was a moment that was much talked about and debated during the making of the film, because in the script it was, I love you too." And the both the director Irvin Kershner and Harrison Ford did not like the line. They thought this isn't really true to Han as a character. Like you said, they're bickering this whole movie, right? I mean, it's
Yeah, I didn't really see the foundation of a love affair going on. I just saw him pursuing her and her mostly pushing back.
right,
So, I mean, I think that was the right choice. I mean, if you're asking me,
right.
for
No,
one
I
of them to say
agree.
I love you and the other one to say I know.
I know, right? Yeah, they
And
thought it was more true to Han as a character, as the character they established, right? So,
right, right.
um, the story goes that they tried 50 different versions of different
Oh,
lines,
different
that they,
takes.
yeah,
Yeah,
different takes, and on the day
yeah.
they were just banging their head against a wall trying to figure out what the line was going to be.
Mm,
And um they were like coming up on lunchtime. It was like time to call it quits, and Irvin Kershner goes, "You know what, don't even think about it, just do whatever you want, Harrison, action." And Harrison stands there and he just says, "I know." And that was the take they used. That was it. That was the
mm.
one. They were like, cut, print, call it a day. And
I mean
yeah,
that
I
yeah,
think it works
I didn't
well.
have a problem with that at all. I mean, that seemed to work.
Yeah, yeah, it
Made
makes
more sense
sense.
than if yeah,
Right,
yeah,
right. Yeah, I totally agree. Yeah, I like that moment. Oh, and we have to mention Billy D. Williams, of course, showing up as a new character, Lando Calrissian.
right.
I
He's a
I
singer, right?
I don't. I think he did do some singing.
I think that's what he was known for, and that's probably why he got casted. I could be wrong because I don't even know any of his songs.
Yeah,
Hopefully, I'm not completely off on that, but I
I
seem to
know.
remember that that was the case.
I know he did a commercial for something that was popular,
Oh,
Colt 45 or something, or some kind of
mm,
thing he did that was a big commercial or something. And he had been in
oh,
a couple movies. Um, and but yeah, I really like his character. The character that comes in. you don't really know about. Han doesn't really trust him. I love their initial meeting out there, and he comes up, he's like, got a lot of guts coming back here after what you pulled, and then he gives him
Yeah,
a big hug, and you're like,
right,
oh,
right,
okay, so
yeah.
they're cool. And then of
He
course
he's in the third one, isn't he? In Return of the Jedi too?
he is, yeah, he does
Yeah, I
come
thought
back for
so.
Return of the
Yeah,
Jedi. Yeah, he goes on the rescue
right.
mission to save Han.
Okay.
So yeah, I enjoy the inclusion of him a lot. I think he adds
Yeah,
a
he
lot
was
to the
he was
movie.
he was good.
Yeah, yeah, and the whole Cloud City thing, I think, just looks amazing. It's a great
Hmm.
idea to have
Hmm.
this, big city kind of floating up in the clouds. Um,
Sure.
so yeah, and then talking again briefly about the finale, the lightsaber duel, Luke leaving the training against the wishes of his mentors,
Yeah.
to save his friends, and you know yeah, that whole final lightsaber duel, I can get not being amazed by it because the prequels, they do all kinds of like
Yeah,
flips
and
and
Phantom Menace,
crazy,
you got
like,
those great lightsaber scenes. I mean, that's one of the
yeah,
best parts of it, you know?
yeah, the
And in,
choreography
in
on
the
those are great.
Attack of the Clones, you've got that lightsaber scene where there's like, 89 Jedi all at once.
Right,
I mean,
right.
yeah.
And then of course
So,
episode 3, which is like the
oh yeah,
craziest on the lava planet. It's like the craziest lightsaber duel. It just goes on for like 20 minutes, and it's just flipping and
right.
spinning and all kinds of
Yeah.
craziness.
And then you've
um
got Yoda when he does his,
right.
albeit
Yes,
CGI
right,
enhanced. I
yes,
mean, that which I saw that with my daughter, and she,
right.
I've never heard her laugh so loud because she thought it
Yeah,
was so funny.
I
I
know.
think it was meant to be funny, you know?
I think it was, I don't know, I've heard Lucas say different things. I think he's like, he said in one interview, he's like, we can't make it look too silly because it'll just be a laugh fest, but we also can't make it too serious because it's Yoda doing a lightsaber. So
Well,
I
my
think he
daughter
wanted
was
to
like
find a
4 or 5,
balance.
so
Yeah,
she, yeah.
right. Yeah. So, anyways, but this lightsaber duel, I really enjoy. It's more emotionally
Right.
driven, I think,
That's true.
than
Yeah. Yeah.
than some of the prequel ones, and it's not highly choreographed. Obviously, they choreographed it, but it doesn't feel choreographed. Sometimes the prequel ones to me can feel like, okay, we're doing a dance move, and you go here, I
Mm,
go here.
yeah.
Whereas to
Yeah.
me, the originals, and they got a little bit back to it in the sequels, I think it feels a little messier. It
Yeah.
feels a little
Yeah.
more like, uh-oh, he could actually kill him a little bit.
Right. Yeah.
So that's why I slightly prefer it to some of the other ones. And again, that,
Okay.
of course, that final um, moment when he, chops his hand off and tells him, "I am your father." Iconic moment in cinema history. I mean, probably like, I would put it up there with the top best plot twists ever. Um, I
Yeah.
mean, just imagining yourself back in 1980. You've seen the first one, this big villain they've got to defeat, and then it turns out it's the hero's dad. And
Yeah.
it's funny,
Yeah.
they went to great lengths to keep it a secret.
Ah.
Um, Lucas knew. He'd never told the writers. The
Hmm.
writers had, I think the line in the script was, Obi-Wan killed your father.
Oh.
Which in and of itself is a pretty good twist. Like, the mentor was actually the bad guy.
Yeah.
But uh, then he told the director so he could direct Mark Hamill in the scene. Then they told Mark Hamill. So the actor David Prowse, who plays Darth Vader, did not know. He did not say, "I am your father"
Oh.
on set. He
Yeah.
said, "Obi-Wan killed your father."
Hmm.
And then I guess, of course, they had to tell James Earl Jones because he had to say it. But those are the
Well,
only people that knew
yeah.
until the movie came out.
Wow.
And so, yeah, they went to great lengths to keep that a secret, and it definitely paid off.
I found out when I watched Tommy Boy, and Chris Farley utters the line. No,
Right,
but I will say, when I saw Return of the Jedi, second movie I ever saw,
right,
I was with a friend's family, and at no point did they say, you're going to like this movie and you'll have no idea what's going on because you don't even know there are prequels or
right,
movies before this. And you
right,
don't know a single character and they're not going to
right,
explain anything.
right,
You don't know that, I didn't know at that point about the I am your father. I didn't know any of that
right,
stuff. I didn't.
right. Yeah, that's
So
interesting. That's
thanks.
interesting. But you still enjoyed it.
Oh yeah. Yeah. I didn't really
Yeah,
understand it.
right.
But I thought it was amazing.
Yeah, yeah. And that's what's kind of cool about all the Star Wars movies kind of stand on their own, even though they're very much a part of a saga. I feel like you could just come into Empire Strikes Back and just have a good time with it, it of course helps to see the other ones, but I think they each kind of do tell their own story, and it's not, Empire definitely has that cliffhanger ending. What's going to happen to Han? Vader's still out there. The Empire has kind of defeated the rebels at this point, but
Right.
it kind of is a satisfying movie watching it just on its own, I think.
Yeah.
Again, mostly because it's character focused, right? It's focused on who they are and who they become by the end of the movie, then going into Return of the Jedi, and they're kind of their fully formed characters.
Yeah. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So
well, I'm glad you liked it.
Yeah, I definitely liked it on my 1000th watch. I don't know. Who knows how many times I've seen these.
Anything you didn't like about Empire?
That's a great question. Anything I didn't like about Empire?
The brother sister kiss.
The brother sister kiss is weird for sure. That was, and Lucas goes back and forth on this. I've heard interviews where he said, yeah, I had it all planned out. I knew what I was doing the whole time. I knew who everyone was, that they were all related. I just did that as kind of a funny joke or, whatever.
Well, you only know it's the brother sister. You don't know until
the end, Jedi, right? Till the next one. Yeah.
Till the next movie. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. That's when they discover that. But it doesn't seem to me like he fully knew. Even like something like Darth Vader, I don't think he actually knew Vader was Luke's dad until he was scripting Empire, because and stuff like, Obi-Wan calls Darth Vader Darth, and later we find out Darth is a Sith title.
Yeah,
so
right.
You wouldn't
right.
call someone Darth if that wasn't their first name. You would just call them Vader.
Not everything matches up, but
no, it doesn't. And to me that
there.
Yeah, and to me that doesn't matter. I'm not a huge like continuity guy. Like it has to be exactly the way it's said. I think Obi-Wan says, he says, you will go to Dagobah and find Yoda, the Jedi Master who instructed me. It's Yoda kind of trained everyone, I guess, at the Jedi Temple, but Qui-Gon, we know, was Obi-Wan's master. So little things like that you can kind of explain away, but don't quite match up. Don't really bother me, but they're there.
Okay.
Especially for someone like me who's like delved deep into the canon. I've read like the books and the comics and seen all the shows and everything. Right. So little things like that can stand out at times. That might be a little bit of a negative, but still doesn't take away from my enjoyment of it really.
Clearly not. If it's on your number, if it's number 5, it has not discounted the movie enough. Yeah,
it's number 5. It's a 5-star movie for me. So thoroughly enjoyed the rewatch. I guess I'll mention the reason that I actually picked Empire is because you had never seen it. I found that out. But my actual favorite of the originals is Return of the Jedi. That was actually my favorite one.
Okay.
I kind of see them all equally in my mind, because I saw them all together. They're all kind of like one story to me. But if I had to single one out, it would probably be Return of the Jedi. I really like the redemption arc of Vader and that whole conclusion. And I'm a big fan of the Ewoks. I know a lot of people aren't, but I think the Ewoks are great. It's that David versus Goliath thing. It's like, and the Rebels have always kind of had that. The Rebels have always kind of had that small band that are kind of on the run. And to have them team up with these little teddy bears and defeat the evil Empire is just perfect to me. It's perfect.
Well, it worked out well to talk about Empire for the reasons that we discussed.
Yes.
And so it was a good experiment. I don't regret watching it.
Good.
And you get I guess, every man's opinion. You get the opinion of a guy that thought 2012 was a great movie.
Perfect. That will make a great discussion, because that is one of my least favorite movies of all time.
Hey, there you go.
So that'll be fun when we talk about that one.
That would be a good one to talk about then.
Yes. Well, that was our first episode of the Real World Podcast. We thank you for joining us. And we hope you come back next time. We're going to continue our top 10 countdown. We'll also be taking a look at Doctor Strange and the Multiverse of Madness coming out soon. And so be sure you stick around for that. Thanks for listening or watching. If you're watching this on YouTube, be sure to like, share it with your friends. Make sure you subscribe to the Real World channel. Hit the bell for notifications. You can also follow us at _Real World on Twitter. Join our Facebook group. We're also on Instagram. You can find us there. So make sure you do all that.
Thanks for listening, everybody. I had a great time. We'll see you next time.
All right. Thanks, everyone. Again, we'll join you on the next episode of the Real World Podcast.